Hello to all, we're here today with a series of replay casts featuring the USS Des Moines in the ranked 14 season. This is going to be a set of games played at rank 6 into rank 5, so this is my promotion game, and the following game will be one played within rank 5, which is currently still quite low population thanks to how relatively early it is in the season. So starting off, this is the rank 6 match, so we're still in 6 to 10 matchmaking. That's about the range you should expect to play within of the Des Moines. I'm in the Des Moines, of course, and we're in a relatively battleship light match, as you can see here. 5 cruisers per side, or actually 6 cruisers per side. I misspoke. And then 1 battleship each. Yamato for me, Repop for them, and then 1 DD for each side. So 1 Cabrosk for me, 1 Gearing for them. So starting off, we're obviously slightly disadvantaged based on Matchmaker. This is of course because our DD is a Cabrosk, and a Cabrosk is not exactly what I would call a cap contesting destroyer. So anyhow, starting off on the bottom spawn, we are gonna just start by doing our job as the sole radar cruiser on our team, as you can see here. So I'm heading up towards the bottom of A, taking the usual bottom of A position that I like to take. Now our Cabrosk is going to wander into A, but with his 9.7 detection range, I don't expect that he's going to have much of an easy time getting anything done. As we approach, Stalingrad does pop up at the edge of our gun range, so we're going to adjust ever so slightly so we can open fire from cover if possible. Now, as we're playing into this position, we are vulnerable to shots from here, but outside of like a Kleber or something, no one should be able to pull into that position yet. So as you can see here, just taking my time, slowing down at the corner. So my radar now covers the entirety of A, and I can safely take some HE pot shots at the Stalingrad. You can see him slowing down, so as long as he stays lit, we'll be able to put fire onto him. But it appears that someone or something did pop a radar, because they did drive off our Cabrosk, which is unfortunate. In the meantime, our Venezia is leading our squad into C, taking our home cap, and on the other side of Smolensk is taking their home cap. So now we know there's at least 2 radars here, at Des Moines and Stalingrad. Looks like both Des Moines are here. So we got quite a bit of company, and Venezia going down the flank presumably. Behind me, backing me up, is our only battleship, the Yamato, and a Smolensk as well as the Cabrosk that was driven off. We do lose sight of the Stalingrad unfortunately, and their gearing touches the cap circle, which prompts me to pop radar. Unfortunately, I don't think there's too many other people who can shoot at him. Maybe the Smolensk, technically. He does not appear to be reacting yet though. There we go. Finally he sends shells. My accuracy in the meantime is a bit limited. Kinda need him to be in the right spot, otherwise my shells will clip the island. But I do at least force him from the cap temporarily. However, as we're doing that, the Venezia does creep past onto the side, and this of course does threaten me along with the Zhao. I can't stay here anymore, because if I fire and he's out in the open within my gun bloom, then I'm going to get spotted, so at this point I'm choosing to reverse out. So once my radar takes out, the gearing will no longer have any threat. He knows the Cabrosk can't outcompete him, and I'm the only radar on the team. So there's not much point in me sticking around, so at this point I'm going to elect to use this time to turn around and reposition. I know we're going to lose the cap. I can't contest these guys on the flank. The Repub and Smolensk are up there. I'm briefly spotted as I make this turn, which tells me that the gearing is reapproaching the cap. But I can't do anything from my current position here. I can't safely engage, so I'm going to reposition on the map based on the information I have about the formation of the enemy team. So I can't make a play here. There's too many ships. It's too dangerous, and because they have a huge spawning advantage and I don't have any vision tools. As I pass by, I do get briefly spotted again, so I do have to angle away from the Venezia and all that jazz as they send shells my way. But as I pull off, I am able to safely get away, pop my repair party from her rudder. Don't expect to be taking any further fire, so should be perfectly fine. So threat-wise, in terms of this kind of matchmaking, as I've mentioned before in my previous Des Moines videos, the biggest threat to the Des Moines is almost always the battleship. In this case, we're lucky enough to be in a single battleship match. So this makes angling quite easy. As long as I keep an eye on the Republic, everything else I can bounce off my bow if necessary. So in the chat, you can see me trying to get the Cabros to stay a little closer in proximity to the two cruisers out there. Now he does kind of match the spotting range of the Zhao, so the Zhao is pretty dangerous for him, but the Venezia with his 12.2 spotting range could be easily kept permanent spotted. Because right now we're pretty blind. I'm just circling because I don't really have any real home to go. I need these guys to pull away a little bit. Gearing does pop up again. I have my radar up, but I don't think he's quite within my radar range, so I elect not to pop it. Team is kind of lost for words right now, and we're not really sure what to do. We have our home cap, of course, but we can't take A back. We need to Cabros to get something done, and we don't have any spotting of the two cruisers flanking us at this point, so we do need to make a bit of a change in order to kind of create an opportunity in the game for us to regain the upper hand, since we are slowly bleeding points. So at this point, the Stalingrad pops up, and this is an opportunity, of course. He's quite close to me, within my gun range, and he's not positioned in a great spot. Now, my battleship down here probably can't shoot him, nor can the Smolensk, but I certainly can, and potentially his Venezia as well, who is going to be able to get onto his broadside if he slides out to about here. So I can see him slowing down here. I'm relatively in cover. Repup's all the way up here, but there's this island in the way that's giving me some amount of cover, and if necessary, I can accelerate with Legendary Module into this crevice over here. So I'm opening up. Do slide a little too far into cover, which is going to keep me from utilizing my full firepower for a little bit, as you can see, putting shells into the mountain. And you can see the Venezia on the side, able to give him a bit of a slam. I pop my radar for a little bit of safety. I want to know if these cruisers over here are potentially flanking me. Since they're not, I can creep up a little more forward, readjusting my angle before I open fire again, as you saw there, because I didn't want to get punished by the Stalingrad's rear gun. Now that I think I'm relatively angled, so I can't take Stalingrad AP, I open fire once more. Stalingrad has a much larger detection circle than me, so it's very easy for me to just keep him on fire. At this point, my cruiser squad up here has pushed north. They're contesting B, but they are pushing into a Smolensk and a Repub, which has gone dark. The fact that the Repub's gone dark and the Hindenburg's over here means the Repub must be right about over here. Toward the end of my radar, I believe, or maybe it's the Khabarovsk. I think it's the Khabarovsk. We get a hard spot on one of the Des Moines inside of A. So I get some extra information there. You saw me take a shot from the side, and that tells me that the flankers have moved up at this point. The Des Moines is radaring me. So I am going to get forced to come forward in order to dodge those shells coming in from behind me. So I'm moving up. We didn't quite manage to finish off this Stalingrad, but at this point I'm able to threaten at least one of the Des Moines over there. So this guy's in cover, but this guy's out in the open, which means I'm relatively pinned right now. I'm between the Stalingrad Smolensk cluster and these guys. And I am going to take a bit of damage if this guy trades back with me, but I can see on the minimap that he's fairly broadside, so I'm able to punish him with some AP before he slides back into cover. I saw the gearing briefly when I did that radar for information, but he's since left, so the only information we have now is the Des Moines, and these two ships are the only things we can act on. Meanwhile, up north, my Zhao and Hindenburg do finish off the Stalingrad at the cost of my Hindenburg's life. My Yamato at the bottom was burned down, so now we're down a lot of pressure. So since we're down a cap and down just about 200 points, we're under pressure to do something and get something done. So at this point I have to make a play. I don't have a choice, so I'm coming up into this cap. Do manage to catch the enemy Des Moines off guard. Nice and broadside. Sorry about the frame stutter, this is a replay after all. So my first salvo is catching with 2 Citadels, turning in hard as he is as well. Doing the classic Des Moines trade. Able to avoid taking too much punishing damage, and at this point I have a significant HP advantage. Remember, there's a Repub over there, but note how I'm sliding behind this piece of cover over here. This will keep me protected from the Repub from firing at me at all, and I know the other Des Moines is still in cover. The gearing is concerning at this point. He was nearby, remember, so that's why I popped my Hydro just a little bit earlier. At this point I have a Smolensk and a Khabarovsk behind me. These guys I can't worry about. I'm covered from these guys even though I'm spotted by this large island chain, remember? And even as I slide forward, popping my radar to take a look at the Des Moines, of course. Even as I slide forward, these guys are sliding and chasing my Smolensk and Venezia team over here, so I'm fairly safe. We do get eyes on the Repub, so he can potentially shoot at me, which is why I'm now stalling out, waiting for the enemy Des Moines behind the rocks radar to fade. I can't touch the cap quite yet, because if I do, then I'll be in the Repub's line of fire, so just have to patiently wait this one out. However, I don't want to just sit there, I want to stay in motion. That way, if there's any rogue Repub shells, if he repositions enough to be able to shoot me, I can at least dodge by accelerating forward. The radar does end now, and now is time to make my play. We're about 250 points down. We don't know where the gearing is, but at least my team in the south does manage to kill one of their pursuers. Smolensk, however, finishes off the Zhao in the north, leaving us in a precarious position down points. Get a brief glimpse of the Repub there, but I know that this Des Moines doesn't have radar, so as long as he doesn't have hydro up, which he doesn't appear to, otherwise I'd already be in the hydro bubble based on my own hydro bubble, then nothing is going to spot me outside of the gearing. Now the gearing could come back and spot me, but because he didn't spot me while I was just hovering there, my best guess is that he looped somewhere outside of my hard detection range. Torpedoes coming past me. Unfortunately at this point I am going to take one, so this is going to interrupt my cap. Some pretty good predictive torps from the gearing, but it's fine. I still have a sizable HP advantage on the other Des Moines in front of me, which is my immediate competitor. Smolensk very reluctant to enter into the cap. It's fine, he's holding the corner against the other Smolensk at this point, I believe. Enemies shelling my Kaba and such. And the gearing does get spotted by the Khabarovsk. I assume the gearing is shooting at him, and that's why. Yes. Anyhows, the enemy Des Moines does make the foolish decision of charging out and reversing right into my broadside gun, so I'm obviously going to take that free kill. You can see me easily dev striking him. In his situation, he really shouldn't have done that. He should have waited for his hydroacoustic or his radar. You can see my radar coming up just about now, about 10 seconds after he decided to make that play. He's under no pressure, remember. He was losing his cap, but he was still up 200 points. As you can see in the chat, I am a little surprised that he chose to make that kind of choice. But it's good for us. I did secure the cap while I was there, and I did get a free Des Moines kill. And as you can see me criticizing, he did make an incredibly dangerous play, which has a very low chance of reward, or really small reward if it works out, and very high risk of not working out, as he does acknowledge. But at this point, we've killed the Des Moines, secured an extra cap, but we need to still secure the game. We're now closing the point gap to 100 points, and we have enough time that we're going to tick over them if the game continues, but we do need to make sure this game is secured. So some conflicting opinions as to what we want to do here, but in terms of my play, you can see me hovering just outside my detection range with the Repub. I pen him all over. He's looking at me, but he no longer has a spotter. So I'm just lighting him up for my Smolensk at this point, waiting for him to shift his guns away, looking at his guns, and only after he fires will I open fire. Now the Repub's covered in 32mm of armor, which means I pen him all over. But do remember he has a 20-second reload as his secondaries open up on me. Secondary spec Repub, don't know about that one. But he's about to slide behind that rock, so at most he gets maybe his rear gun off at me, angling away from the Smolensk, and I easily go dark. The Smolensk decided to smoke for some god-awful reason, which means now he has no vision whatsoever. I was spotted because I was shooting at the Repub. Repub slides behind cover, and he no longer has line of sight. So I was able to force a smoke from the Smolensk, so that gives my Smolensk here an advantage. I still have two Smolensks here. At this point, with my last radar charge up, my job now is to defend the cap. We saw that gearing last, shooting up my Khabarovsk. So I'm going to come in and make sure that the gearing doesn't take our cap from us. With the cap advantage now, and having secured that Des Moines kill, I know we can just win this game off of points. So all I have to do is guard the cap from the gearing, sliding down here behind cover so neither of these two can shoot me at all from this angle. So very, very safe. I become hard spotted. I was hard spotted a second ago, so just going to wait a couple seconds and then I pop my radar. This gives me the information I need. I don't even need to do any shooting. I have 2 Smolensks beside him. So all they have to do is shoot him up, and we should be just fine. Enemy Smolensk is shelling me just a little bit. Probably was taking his time when I was spotted by the gearing to try and find a gap through the rocks. But it's not nearly good enough. Smolensk isn't going to kill me in that kind of time period. And my 2 Smolensks do secure the gearing, which should secure us the game. At this point, all we have to do is run south away from those two. They no longer have any vision support, and the game will close out. And what looked like a pretty lost game when we were down 300 points and down a ship, including our battleship, the most important, one of the most important ships in this kind of matchmaking, was quickly turned around, but just by a bit of intelligent decision making in figuring out when you could get shot at as a Des Moines player, and then just forcing forward into the cap to make a play, pinning down that Stalingrad, of course, who did end up out of position, and then proceeding to pull into the cap, kill one Des Moines, actually go into the cap, kill the other Des Moines, and carefully just control the gearing and make sure he gets dispatched. So that was the first match. So this is the match that got us into rank 5, earned us our flag of the first league. Pretty spicy game as the screen goes black. But that's not all we have lined up for today. Second game, as I load up, is going to be a game played at rank 5, but just as we load in, reviewing the last game, we had a significant vision disadvantage at the beginning thanks to the composition that matchmaking gave us, giving us a Khabarovsk as our single destroyer. We went down a cap quite early and down on kills because their flank team of Venezia and Zhao came over and killed my Yamato, which was not able to move around very much while their gearing took our cap. Khabarovsk not able to do anything, just milling around, kind of useless overall. So we ended up losing our battleship uncontested. In the meantime, we forced ourselves forward into the center of the map, made use of our vision control tools and superior positioning allowed by our legendary module to re-secure the ships around a cap that was contested by killing the 2 Des Moines, taking it ourselves, and eventually forcing down to play by just avoiding the enemy battleship and hunting down everything else. Anyhow, loading into this rank 5 game, this was played on the map Northern Lights. The mode is of course Domination. As you can see, a similar situation which favors the Des Moines, 1 battleship only per side. However, we're on Northern Lights, which is a bit of a different map than Haven. Anyhow, Kremlin on my side, Montana on theirs. And then we have Des Moines versus Des Moines Venezia, Minotaur Smolensk, Smolensk, and then 3 DDs per side. So a bit of a different mix-up. Very cruiser and destroyer heavy. Now on Northern Lights, the Des Moines typically will park here. The Des Moines is often and quite frequently used as a flank guard. So it sits on this hill over here, or if I use recam, this hill over here. You can point with your bow pointed over here, and your rear to the cap, and you're just there for the first radar. Now the point of this is to guard any cruisers from pushing the flank because, as you might imagine, trying to push in through a bow in Des Moines is exceptionally difficult if you're not a battleship. However, in this game, I have only 1 battleship to worry about. So you can stunt the Des Moines push with a battleship pushing around, but of course that takes a battleship basically out of the game. The battleships tend to hover around here, more favoring the home cap, rather than around here, which would allow you to somewhat influence your home cap, but generally has really, really poor lines of sight. Venezia pops up quite early as my Shimakaze dives into the cap. Just readying myself to get into position. Gonna beach here, unfortunately. Mismanaged my turn somewhat, but that's quite fine. I'm still in cover, nothing's gonna spot me at this range. A radar does light me up, so I do have to be careful now. So I counter radar. My counter radar catches off the 2 destroyers. Presumably my Shimakaze, however, is inside of the radar, so he does have to do a bit of running. Venezia pops up, however, so that's going to prompt me to switch targets. Not because he's more important necessarily than the destroyers, but because he's completely flat broadside. As you can see, one of my battleships does punish him, taking him down to half. He does, however, get off a meaty salvo onto my Shimakaze. As you can see, he's dying quite quickly inside of that single radar. The radar ends, but it's too late. The Smolensk, daring, and all that firepower is poured into him, and we quickly find ourselves down a destroyer at a disadvantage. As you can see, the Venezia acknowledges that he took a pretty hefty trade, but we were unable to finish him, and they did get a destroyer, so now they have a decisive lead. On the other side, the enemy Kleber decides to bump into my 2 destroyers in Des Moines, so hopefully they'll kill him, but in the meantime, the most important piece of information I've gained is where the Montana is. So now I know the Montana is sliding away, so I'm going to try and make a play with the Des Moines. So you can see me here abandoning the flank guard position. Now this is because I've already burned off my radar. My radar is basically the only reason for me to stay there and keep myself mostly shielded from fire. But since I've now burned it, there's no point in me sticking around. So I'm going to try and make something happen. Thankfully, on the other side, my team does punish that foolish Kleber who decided to push up into those 2 destroyers in the Des Moines. So we get something back. But we do have both our destroyers here up at our home cap while their destroyers are taking that cap. So we do have to kind of get something done. We're calling back our destroyers, but it'll take them some time to get back to here, so we are going to lose the cap. Now normally a Minotaur would be able to just radar this cap if he was radar Minotaur, but this guy's a smoke Minotaur, which is of questionable utility in ranked, I would say. Anyhow, you've seen me heading far into the east for some time now, and this is because I'm trying to get onto the edge of my detection bubble. So the play I'm trying to make is I'm trying to do that flank and go around. I know the battleship can't really contest me from this distance, especially a Montana with a slow shell. So I'm trying to go around without letting ships touch my detection bubble. So to do that, I have to go all the way east. I do spot a Smolensk, which has slightly inferior detection to me. So I switch over to armor piercing. Note, however, I'm broadsiding, so I do need to watch my angle. But I am now in a position, based on information, to flank these 2 cruisers that are guarding the cap. I start off on the Smolensk, get some early chip damage, but Des Moines pops up and he's even flatter, which makes him even more tempting. Smolensk pops into his smoke, that's quite fine. We'll deal with that momentarily. For now, I'm just going to deal with the Des Moines, force him forward into the cap and into a much more dangerous position. Unfortunately, my Minotaur can't even shoot at him yet because he's in a weird position, taking fire from the Smolensk, but I can tank it for the time being. Popping my heal. I get radared, so I'm going to counter radar to keep him lit for my allies. Hopefully someone can shoot at him, but even if they can't, well, it's quite fine. The Smolensk appears to be repositioning, so I'm just reversing into him with my legendary module. Notice how I'm going backwards in full reverse at 18 knots. I do manage to reverse into range for radar for him, so now I can actively trade. He's trading with AP, so I'm using my legendary module to start-stop juke. Now his shells are much faster than mine, but my shells are much more potent, so he does need to watch his angle much more than I need to watch mine. I'm using my pretty decent rearward firing angles, but I do glide out of radar range, so I'm no longer able to shoot at him. At this point, my goal is to correct my angle. Now do note I'm still spotted and still within the Montana's excellent 24-kilometer gun range, so I do need to be mindful of that. But I'm angled against AP now, and I know the Smolensk has no real spotter, since the Daring was up here and the other destroyer is over here. So I can just cease fire and fade into concealment, and now I can take my time and correct my angle. You can see that my forcing the Des Moines forward did cause him to take a huge amount of damage. He's trying to disengage himself now again, but I'm still here holding his rear, so he does not have anywhere to go in terms of the flank, as my Kremlin is just pushing him down. And he does get dispatched by this Des Moines over here, which I assume was hammering him with HE from this angle, and the Kremlin that's bearing down upon him. I've more or less corrected my angle. I was briefly firing as the Smolensk smoke fades, so I am spotted by my gun bloom. However, even though he's kind of far away, not concerned at all about trading. Remember, my Kremlin was bearing down into the cap, so he's very close to the Kremlin, so he has a Minotaur and a Kremlin to deal with in this situation, and I'm still on his flank, so I can just apply pressure by chasing him down. We're still even on ships and down on caps, but the Kremlin's now occupying that cap, and we're in a position to quickly, in a short span of time, take out the 2 guard cruisers that were left there. The Daring is close by, but it looks like my Kremlin has managed to put himself into a position of cover. Just making sure here that the small ones can't slip away. Switching to high explosive at this point because he's low enough where I don't care about trying for AP Citadels, just trying to put any damage onto him that I can to keep him from slipping away into the night. Kremlin inside the cap, but he's going to switch places with the Minotaur. Note the proximity of the Montana. Do have to be careful. I did take a salvo from him while I was shooting at the Smolensk, but I was able to thankfully dodge it. And at this point we have quite a firm grasp on the game, having destroyed 3 of their cruisers. Now their Montana can, of course, still threaten me, but I'm in complete concealment. I know the Daring's not inside my detection bubble. He was last spotted firing from his smoke. So I'm just going to take my time, glide behind this piece of cover over here in front of me. And once I know that the Montana turrets are turned inward, in this case toward the Kremlin, I can open fire quite comfortably. Just looking to set some fires of HE for now, get my first fire. Sliding behind cover so I can't take fire at all. Okay, I got a interruption there. Sorry about that. So I had to put myself on mute. But as you saw there, I was just staying behind that piece of cover and hammering that Montana as he slid in. We dealt with the Montana. He was trying to ram the Kremlin, but my Minotaur was able to give him some torpedoes and save his life. And so after that, I continued forward. And pushed this Daring out of his smoke. Popped my radar, make sure he can't contest me. Now my Hydro is down now, but I kind of doubt he torped toward me. But even so, I can just minimize the chances of getting torped by just going relatively bowing toward him. But eventually, of course, I do chase him down, and thanks to that flank position together with my Des Moines in the north, and my Kremlin, who did recognize that it was time to push in, I was able to go along the flank after recognizing that the Montana had put himself out of position in terms of being able to contest me. Just slid down along the flank using my detection radius, being very mindful of when I would be spotted and what ships I'm likely to face. That is myself and a Smolensk, so I'm not going to be surprised by being suddenly detected, most likely. Make that play, assassinate the Des Moines and Smolensk, not personally, but by forcing them forward into a position where they could get fired upon by the rest of my team very easily, which allowed us to secure a decisive advantage, roll in, take the cap, take some kills, force the objective, and win the game. So anyhow, that was 2 quick rank 5-ish Des Moines games, where we made some quick decisive decisions to turn around games where we were in a disadvantaged position by making use of our vision tools and mobility tools, as well as our knowledge about both our ship and the enemy ship. There's my account email, BTdubs. So have fun with that one. Probably could have turned it off. Oh, that's even worse. That's fine. I'll play whatever weeb music I want. But yeah, as we log in onto the Wargaming client, which takes 5 centuries to load as per usual. That was just 2 quick ranked Des Moines games in the Workhorse Des Moines. Just to reiterate, this is my current build, this is the captain I was using. So priority target, adrenaline rush, superintendent, concealment expert, expert marksman, expert loader, and then personally I'm opting for survivability expert for a bit of extra power inside of those close-in one-on-one cruiser duels. And then I'm going to go for last stand and preventative maintenance. Last stand to avoid having to use damcon for things like rudder and engine, which can happen if battleships slam you with shells when you just have to angle tank them and hope that they have bad dispersion, and preventative maintenance to help keep those Des Moines turrets online and operational. Module wise, I'm running legendary module, this consumable setup of course. Main armaments, radar, better accuracy, not bothering with AA at this point. Better engine power which comes into play later. Concealment expert, and then legendary module. Now legendary module on Des Moines gives even more engine power, is basically a second propulsion module. So if you see here, minus 50 time to accelerate, and then another minus 50% time to accelerate, which means that a Des Moines comes forward very, very quickly. Now this does actually decrease the action time of your surveillance radar very slightly, which is why it's very important to take radar mod 1, so that you end up with a net plus 10%. That way you can get the maximum number of shots off during the legendary module's action time. And it also gives improved rudder shift, which allows you to dodge. So this legendary module is very important in terms of making the plays because it gives you the acceleration power you need to make snap decisions and like react in a snappy manner to sudden threats. It allows you to go from full stop to full speed in more or less about 3 to 5 seconds, which is obviously quite the module. Anyhow, gonna wrap up this Des Moines ranked commentary here. This ship is an excellent pick for ranked, especially when you can avoid battleships. So just be aware of where battleships are. You're not always going to be as lucky as I was there in those 2 games to get matches where there's only 1 battleship per side. But more or less, if you control your vision and if you know what you're doing, the Des Moines is exceptionally powerful and you can easily turn games that look pretty lost, just like those 2 examples there. I'll wrap this up for now here, and I'll catch you all later. Cheers!